Okay, everyone. You ever get that feeling? You know that feeling like there's this one thing just hanging over your head?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it's like that big report you got to write, or finally making that doctor's appointment.
Right.
Or even something small, like sorting through a pile of papers. And it's like, no matter how much you know you should just do it, you end up doing anything else.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about procrastination.
Exactly. Procrastination. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're going deep into this whole world of procrastination and, more importantly, how to, actually start getting a grip on it.
I think a lot of people are going to like this one.
Yeah, I think so too. So we've been checking out this article called Overcoming Procrastination, a practical guide. And what really struck me about it, it doesn't just give those, surface level tips. It really goes deep into why we procrastinate in the first place.
Mm.
And then it gives us some pretty concrete strategies to break free from that whole cycle.
I like that. Get to the root of the problem.
Yeah, exactly. So our goal today is to really pull out the most useful stuff from this guide. The stuff you can actually use to tackle your to-do list with more confidence and a lot less of that underlying stress.
Less stress. That's what we like.
For sure. So to kick things off, maybe we can start with why we even procrastinate in the first place.
Okay, so the guide makes this really interesting point. It says that procrastination, it's not always just about bad time management.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. It's often rooted in something deeper, something they call a challenge with self-regulation.
Self-regulation, okay.
Yeah. Think of it like trying to stick to a healthy diet.
Yeah.
Right? Like, intellectually you want to eat healthy, but in the moment, the temptation for something, less healthy is really strong.
Oh, yeah, totally.
So that internal struggle, that push and pull between prioritizing long-term goals over immediate comfort, that's often at the heart of why we procrastinate.
It's like a battle in our brains. So I'm curious, the article also talks about this thing called the pleasure principle. What is that all about, and how does it play into this?
Okay, so this is where it gets kind of cool, how our brains work. You see, our brains are wired to seek out pleasure and to avoid pain. Like it's almost instinctive. And that's basically the pleasure principle in action.
Okay.
So when we come up against a task that seems difficult or boring or maybe just requires a lot of effort, our brains are kind of drawn to those activities that give us a faster, more immediate sense of reward. Things like checking social media or, watching a funny video, anything that gives us that little dopamine hit.
Instant gratification.
Exactly. It's like our brain's saying, why bother with that hard stuff when you could be feeling good right now?
It's the siren call of the internet. Always there. Always tempting.
Always tempting.
Okay, so we've got the pleasure principle working against us, but the article also mentions fear of failure and perfectionism as culprits. I know I've definitely been there.
Oh, yeah. This is a big one. For a lot of people, the fear of not meeting expectations, the fear of being judged, that can be a huge roadblock to even getting started.
Absolutely.
And perfectionists, they often set these incredibly high standards for themselves, sometimes impossible standards.
Right.
It's like if they can't do something perfectly right from the start, then there's no point in even trying. And this can lead to a lot of anxiety. So they just avoid the task altogether.
Yeah.
It's a way of protecting themselves.
Yeah. It's like they're saying, if I can't do it perfectly, I won't do it at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, when you think about it, doesn't really make sense.
Right. But in that moment, it feels very real.
It does. And then there's that feeling of being overwhelmed, like when you have a ton of things on your plate or a task just seems way too big. I think the guide called it decision paralysis.
Decision paralysis. That's a good one.
Yeah.
It's like you're staring at a blank canvas, right? The possibilities are endless, but it's also terrifying. So when tasks are not well defined, or they just seem enormous, our brains kind of struggle to figure out that first step, that first manageable step.
It's like you don't know where to start.
Exactly. And that lack of clarity, combined with how difficult the task seems, it can just make us feel stuck. And so what do? We procrastinate. It's like our brain just short circuits, doesn't even know how to begin.
Right. So we've talked about the pleasure principle, fear of failure, perfectionism, decision paralysis. The guide also touches on some things that are maybe a little more straightforward. Things like, just having low self-discipline or not being good at managing your time.
Oh, yeah. Those are important, too. Sometimes it's not these deep psychological issues. Sometimes we just need to, get better at organizing ourselves and being a little more disciplined.
Yeah, I think that's important to remember.
Absolutely. So while understanding those deeper psychological reasons is important for long-term change, developing better habits and structures, that can be really helpful right away.
It's like giving yourself the tools you need to deal with procrastination head on.
Exactly. And often it's a mix of both. Addressing the deeper reasons and having those practical tools, that's what really leads to progress.
So we've gone pretty deep into the why behind procrastination. Now let's shift gears and get into the how. What can we actually do about it? The guide starts off by saying, know your enemy, which is all about understanding your personal triggers.
That's a great place to start. It's like if you want to break a bad habit, you got to know what sets it off in the first place.
Right.
Just like understanding why you crave comfort food when you're stressed, you need to figure out those specific situations, emotions, even thoughts that usually lead to you procrastinating.
Okay.
And the guide suggests something really helpful, keeping a journal.
A journal, huh?
Yeah. It can be really eye-opening. Start paying attention. When do you usually procrastinate? What are you feeling right before you do? What kind of thoughts are going through your mind? Once you pinpoint those triggers, you can start to anticipate them and maybe even stop yourself from falling into that procrastination trap.
So it's about recognizing those patterns and then breaking them. I like it. Okay, the next strategy is small bites, big impact. This one resonates with me because it's all about breaking those giant tasks down into much smaller, easier steps. And I love that they mentioned the 2-minute rule. Can you tell us more about that?
Oh yeah, the 2-minute rule. It's brilliant in its simplicity. It's basically saying that if you have a task that takes less than 2 minutes to do, just do it right then. Don't even put it on your to-do list. Don't let it clutter up your mind.
Makes sense.
You'd be surprised how many little things we put off that we could actually get done in just a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Replying to an email, filing a document, small stuff. But getting those done frees up mental space and makes you feel more on top of things.
It's like those tiny wins give you the momentum to keep going.
Exactly.
Okay, the guide also highlights the importance of setting realistic deadlines and then using a method called time blocking. We all know we should be doing this, but what are some tips for actually making it work?
The key here is that word realistic. Instead of just setting some random deadline for a big project, break it down into those smaller steps we talked about, and then give each step its own realistic deadline.
Right.
Time blocking takes that a step further. You actually schedule specific blocks of time in your day or week, and those blocks are only for working on those tasks. No distractions allowed. It's like making an appointment with yourself to get things done.
I've tried time blocking before, but I haven't always stuck with it. Any advice on how to be more successful with it?
I think starting small is really helpful. Don't try to block off huge chunks of time right away. Begin with shorter, more focused periods, maybe 30 minutes for an hour. Then, as you get comfortable, you can gradually increase the time. Also, be really specific about what you're going to work on during that block. Don't just write down work on project. Write something like write the introduction for the project report.
Be specific. Got it.
Exactly. And probably the most important thing, treat those time blocks as non-negotiable. Unless there's a real emergency, don't let anything else get in the way.
Yes.
Stick to your schedule.
So being specific and committed are key.
Absolutely.
The next technique the guide mentions is the Pomodoro technique. Can you give us a quick rundown on what that is?
Sure. The Pomodoro technique is basically a way to manage your time by working in focused intervals and then taking short breaks. So you work for 25 minutes straight, and then you take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
Those 25-minute blocks are called Pomodoros. And after every 4 Pomodoros, you take a longer break, like 15 or 20 minutes.
I see.
It's a great way to stay focused because it breaks your work into these manageable chunks. And it also helps prevent burnout because you're taking those regular breaks.
Makes sense. It's like tricking your brain into focusing for shorter periods so that the whole task doesn't seem as overwhelming.
Exactly.
Okay, the guide also talks about shifting your mindset from perfectionism to what they call a growth mindset. And this ties back to that fear of failure we were talking about earlier.
Right, because a perfectionist mindset can really hold you back.
Yeah.
It's all about trying to get everything perfect right from the start, which is almost never possible.
Right.
So you end up feeling like you're not good enough, and that can lead to procrastination. A growth mindset is different. It recognizes that you can improve your abilities and intelligence through effort and by learning from your mistakes.
Mistakes are okay.
Yeah, mistakes become opportunities to learn and grow. The focus shifts from trying to be perfect to just making progress step by step.
So it's more about the journey than the destination.
Exactly. It's about valuing the process of getting better.
That makes a lot of sense. The guide also talks about the importance of accountability. How does that play into overcoming procrastination?
Accountability is a powerful tool because it gives you that external motivation to stay on track. When you share your goals with someone else, maybe a friend, a mentor, or even a group, it creates a sense of obligation.
Right.
Knowing that someone's going to check in on your progress can really push you to keep going. And it also gives you a support system. You have people you can talk to when you're struggling, people who can encourage you and help you figure things out.
It's like having your own personal cheerleading squad.
Exactly.
The next strategy is creating what the guide calls a sanctuary of focus. It's all about optimizing your work environment. And I know for me, a messy desk definitely doesn't help my concentration.
Oh yeah, a cluttered workspace can be a major distraction. The guide has some great tips for creating that sanctuary of focus, turning off notifications on your phone and computer, using website blockers to avoid those tempting time wasters, and just getting rid of all the clutter in your physical workspace.
So it's about setting yourself up for success.
Absolutely. When you have a dedicated, organized space, it signals to your brain that it's time to focus, and it reduces those external distractions that can pull you away from your work.
That makes sense. This next one is so important, and it's about being kind to yourself. The guide calls it self-compassion. And I think we often forget to do this. We can be so hard on ourselves when we procrastinate, which probably just makes things worse.
That inner critic can be brutal. When you beat yourself up for procrastinating, it just creates a bunch of negative feelings that can actually make you want to procrastinate even more.
So it's a vicious cycle.
Exactly. Self-compassion is about treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer to a friend who's struggling. It's about recognizing that procrastination is something everyone does. It's normal.
It's human.
Yeah, it's human. And instead of dwelling on your past procrastination, just focus on making small, positive changes going forward. It's about being your own best friend, not your own worst enemy.
That's a really great way to put it. We need to be on our own team. And the guide also suggests that we celebrate wins, by using some kind of reward system. I like this one.
Me too. Rewarding yourself after you complete tasks, even the small ones, is a great way to reinforce those productive behaviors. It helps you associate getting things done with something positive. And the reward doesn't have to be anything big. It could be taking a break to do something you enjoy, like listening to music or reading a book, or maybe treating yourself to something small, like a piece of chocolate. Even just acknowledging your accomplishment to yourself can be a reward. It's about recognizing your effort and giving yourself that positive reinforcement.
It's like, hey, good job, you did it. Now have a little treat.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're nearing the end of our deep dive here. The last strategy the guide mentions is building momentum by creating consistent routines.
This was all about making those positive habits automatic. When you have set routines for things like work, exercise, and even relaxation, it takes less effort to get started.
It's like you're on autopilot.
Kinda, yeah. When you do things consistently, your brain knows what to expect. And it becomes easier to get into that flow state where you're just getting things done without having to fight that initial resistance.
It takes the thinking out of it.
Exactly.
So to wrap things up, it seems like overcoming procrastination isn't about finding one magic solution. It's more about understanding yourself, figuring out what your weaknesses are, and then using these strategies to build better habits and systems.
I think that's a great summary. It's about breaking down those tasks, setting realistic deadlines, focusing your time and energy, shifting your mindset, getting support from others, creating a good work environment, being kind to yourself, celebrating your wins, and building those routines that help you stay on track.
It's like a whole toolbox of strategies that you can pick and choose from to figure out what works best for you.
Exactly. And remember, it's a journey. There will be times when you still procrastinate. The important thing is to not get discouraged. Just learn from those moments and keep practicing those strategies.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Well, this has been a really eye-opening deep dive for me, and I hope it's given everyone listening some valuable takeaways.
Me too. The real power comes from taking what we've talked about today and experimenting with it in your own life. Figure out what works for you.
So as you go about your day today, think about one small thing you can do right now to put these strategies into action. Maybe break down that one big task into smaller pieces, set a mini deadline, or just try to notice what triggers you to procrastinate. Just take that first step and you'll be on your way to conquering procrastination.
One step at a time.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. We'll catch you next time.